Hello, my friends. Today we're here to talk about award voting. And the one thing that we can all agree on is that every year, they always get it wrong. Now, some awards, it doesn't matter. Do I care who wins the King Clancy? No, I don't at all. Some awards are just voted on by one guy, the Mark Messier Leadership Award, where he always picks someone crazy. Then you have the next step up, some that are voted on by broadcasters, or like the Vezina, which is voted on by the GMs, which usually results in some degree of insanity. But today we're talking about the Hart. Now, the Hart is always at the center of this person should have gotten X vote. Sometimes the controversy surrounding the Hart Trophy voting isn't even about who wins. A couple of years ago, McDavid was supposed to be a unanimous Hart winner, but Seth Rohrabaugh from Pittsburgh didn't put him as his number one choice. People were almost as mad as they would have been had McDavid not won the Hart at all. So really, we're here today to talk about the most pedantic of the pedantic, to really split hairs here. Only so many people each year even get Hart votes, and there's a fair amount of Hart votes to go around. Each person named as a voter by the PHWA gets 5, a first, second, third, fourth, and fifth place vote. So usually there are a couple fifth place votes that are throwaways for their home team that they happen to cover. But theoretically, each year, there is one best player that doesn't get Hart votes. And today, we're here to find them. The best player from each year of the lockout to not receive a single vote for MVP. If you had a bad day. 2006 is a great year to start for this process. First, some honorable mentions. Marian Hossa spent his entire season with the pretty bad Thrashers, playing alongside two other stars in Ilya Kovalchuk and Mark Savard. Now, Hossa didn't produce quite as much as Kovalchuk, the only one of the three to get Hart votes, but he was still a really great player who deserves some credit for almost getting that team into the playoffs. And his two-way play far exceeds Kovalchuk, obviously. On the other end of the team quality spectrum is Sergei Zubov, who was on a very good Stars team, but voters only gave their votes to Mike Modano and, for some reason, a sub-900 save percentage Marty Turco. But our winner for 2006 is Joe Sakic. Sakic was 36 years old and was the best player on a bad team that made the playoffs. Think Taylor Hall in 2018. Nowadays, he probably would have gotten the Crosby-style votes too, as the old guy who stuck around and still was good. Was he the best player in the league at that point? No, of course not. But was there an argument that he was the most valuable to his team? Feels like you could have made an argument there. The only other vote recipient on his team was Marek Svatos. Rest in peace, he was sick. Cutting in front, he scores! In 2007, we have honorable mentions of Olli Jokinen dragging the Panthers behind him, and the always underrated Dan Boyle. For reference, this is not the last time you will see Boyle on this list. But our winner in 2007 is Mark Savard. He hovered right near 100 points with 96, which is more than double what the third place Bruin had that season. Now, the Bruins were not very good that year. They did not score very much. But Savard was involved in over 45% of the team's goals. Savard actually went entirely unrewarded for his performance that season. No Lady Byng, he takes too many penalties. No Selke, he wasn't that great defensively. No All-Star game. No NHL All-Star. And of course, no Hart. Shawty got them apple bottom jean boots with the fur. 2008, we have another two good honorable mentions. Nicholas Backstrom, the goalie, who was so good when he first came into the NHL, partially because he was a little bit older. But though he received Vezina votes in each of his first 3 seasons, he wouldn't receive a Hart vote until 2013. A season which, coincidentally, he was not that good. A little late on the uptake there, guys. Another honorable mention goes to Jason Spezza. Spezza suffered in Hart vote terms from playing with two very, very good players. Nobody was really sure how good Spezza was when not with Danny Heatley or Daniel Alfredsson. Alfredsson, the only one of the trio to get Hart votes. But the winner in 2008 is Brian Campbell. There just is no love for the small, analytic demon defenseman. Campbell started the season on a mediocre Sabres team, but got traded to a very good Sharks team. And Campbell was probably the best player on that Sabres team, and the second best player only behind Joe Thornton on that Sharks team. Once again, I'm not saying that this guy deserved to win the Hart, but somebody give him a 5th. somebody throw him a 5th place vote. That's all I'm saying. I'm just pointing out the disrespected. You know when people say it's an honor just to be nominated? This is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the people who were not honored. I got a feeling. Ooh. 4 honorable mentions here for 2009. We have both Sedins and both Nicklas Backstroms. The Sedins run into the kind of thing that I talked about with Spezza, where no one's really sure which one's better and which one to theoretically vote for. Eventually that'll get solved later in their career when one wins the Hart. Henrik? Henrik win the Hart? Yeah, it was Henrik. I've already talked about goalie Nicklas Backstrom, just copy and paste what I said for the last season. He was also very good this season. Of course, center Nicklas Backstrom, I've said before, is both very overrated and underrated at the same time. He's not a Hall of Famer, but he's a terrific two-way center, and especially in 2009, he was at the peak of his powers. But the winner in 2009 is Ilya Kovalchuk. By this point, he is the only guy left in Atlanta, and he's still putting up 40 goals and 80 points. Give the guy a break. Give him something. Don't stop, make it pop, DJ blow my speakers up. Our honorable mentions for 2010 include some retreads, Dan Boyle and Daniel Sedin, but it also brings in Brad Richards. The thing with Brad Richards is that I think everybody kind of knows what Brad Richards is. He puts up a ton of points. He's always put up a ton of points. Even when he was bad, even when the Rangers were like trying to load him into a cannon and fire him out to sea, he was still putting up points. That's really where good things begin and end with Brad Richards. He's a very productive player. He's very good on the power play. He's not a great two-way player. In 2010, with 91 points, Richards was 7th in the league in scoring. That should be undeniable, but like I said, I think everybody kind of knew what Brad Richards was. Except for, I guess, the Rangers, who signed him for $1 billion, but whatever, that's for a different time. Daniel Sedin tied for 11th in scoring that season with our winner. That's right, he's back, folks. It's Ilya Kovalchuk. He got traded to a playoff team. What's he got to do? I know he wasn't there the whole time, but he got traded to that playoff team. And to get him, the Devils had to take a severe spanking from Gary Bettman. He really paddled them. Well, no, your contract's too big. I don't like it. If you don't like the contracts, Gary, how about you do a lockout in 2013, okay? It could have had it all. For 2011, I have 2 lesser honorable mentions, and then a greater honorable mention, and then our actual winner. The 2 lesser honorable mentions are Dan Boyle, who I think I should just mention every year that he's eligible, because the guy's like 100th percentile WAR player every year. He said, my on-ice impacts are better than everyone else, and nobody cares. Louis Eriksson is a guy I think a lot of people get in the weeds about, because he was really good, and everybody was like, oh, he's so underrated. And it's like, no, he just plays out west and you went to bed. And then he was bad. And then he was good. And then he was bad again. He was good again for just enough time to make a bunch of money, which, shout out. Shout out to a real bag chaser, Louis Eriksson. But in 2011, Louis Eriksson was the two-way, very good scorer that everybody thinks of him as during his prime. Now, the honorable mention is the man who Kovalchuk passed his curse on to, which is Dustin Byfuglien, a 20-goal scoring elite defensive defenseman, and no one gives a crap. The Thrashers barely exist at this point. They're packing bags. But our winner in 2011 is a guy who I think gets a little disrespected. That's Cam Ward. And when I say Cam Ward gets disrespected, I may even be just alluding to myself, because I, for a long time, thought he was a little overrated, just riding on his big cup run in 2006, where he got pulled in the conference final. There were times where he was bad. I know that they don't win without him, but there were times in 2006 where he was bad in the playoffs. But Cam Ward was a top 3 goalie in 2011. And he almost drug a mid could be Carolina team to the playoffs. If they make the playoffs, he definitely gets votes. But as it stands, he's our snub of the year. Now and then I think of when we were together. Okay, so I know that I said Dustin Byfuglien got Kovalchuk's curse. But really, Kovalchuk's curse got split in 2. One for the person who is on the Thrashers, and one for the goal-scoring forward who is on a terrible team. And that's our friend Phil Kessel. Phil Kessel's going to be mentioned quite a few times here. This is during the he's a lazy American who no, you're never going to win with because he's a bum or something. And also he scores too much or something. I don't really know. I don't know why they hated him so much. Our other honorable mention is Patrick Elias, who I don't think is a Hall of Famer. Don't get it twisted. We might do a Hall of Fame court with him later. But he was really good in 2012. He's a very good scorer, and he's a little Louis Eriksson-like, except even better. He was a better player than Louis Eriksson. Controversial take to say that Patrick Elias was a better player than Louis Eriksson. But he was very good defensively. He played a lot on the penalty kill and could score, like I said, on a Devils team that wasn't very offensively driven. But in 2012, guess who's stealing Patrick Elias's Hart votes? That's right, Ilya Kovalchuk, who is the actual best player on that Devils team. But Elias was really close to Kovalchuk at that point. He was much, much, much better defensively, but Kovalchuk was playing 24 minutes a night for that team. He was their rock. Sorry, Zach Parise. But our winner in 2012 is John Tavares. The reason I think John Tavares was a bit of a snub is because of the next two scorers on the Islanders, Matt Moulson and P.A. Parenteau, both of whom were far better with the Islanders than they ever were with anyone else. That's John Tavares. Now, did the Islanders make the playoffs? No, of course not. They weren't any good. But Tavares was that team, even though it's not super obvious because the next few guys are being made so much better by John Tavares. Early era John Tavares was unbelievable. And I know Islanders fans want to just throw out John Tavares. That didn't happen at all to them. So as a result, it feels like there aren't that many people who are going back and being like, yeah, John Tavares was sick. Because John Tavares was sick. He was so good.
What?
2013 to me is one of the most egregious snubs as our winner, but we'll go through the honorable mentions first. Chris Letang has always been a guy who's gotten snubbed for major awards, mostly because he's just not at the level of guys like Erik Karlsson or Duncan Keith or Drew Doughty. But in 2013, he was monstrous. He was so good, but he also missed a chunk of the season with injury, which is always going to hurt your case. In 2013, Letang had 38 points in 35 games. He had a legitimate argument for the Norris. He probably could have won. 2013 was actually the only season in Chris Letang's career where he was a finalist for the Norris, which seems crazy given the reputation. Our other honorable mention is Kari Lehtinen, who led the league in goals saved above expected. He was very good behind a not very good Stars defense. Lehtinen often gets a little lost in the shuffle. Leightonen's another guy a little bit like Letang, where he was always a top 10-ish goalie, but never really a real Vezina competitor. But here in 2013, like I said, he led the league in goals saved above expected. And hold on, we'll talk about him more. But our winner for 2013 is Phil Kessel. The Leafs made the playoffs. What more do you want from the guy? Oh yeah, I should have given the MVP vote for the Leafs to friggin' Tyler Bozak. Give me a break. Give me a break. The Leafs break this extremely long playoff drought, and the only Hart vote anyone can muster for them is one for James Reimer. James freaking Reimer, man. Oh, Phil was -3. Shut up. Shut up.
'Cause I'm happy. I hate this song, man.
2014, we got some familiar faces. Oh, it's Kari Lehtinen. Oh, he led the league in goals saved above expected again? Come on, man. Give Kari Lehtinen some love. This is the only season in his entire career where he even got one Vezina vote. And that is the closest to a major award he has ever gotten. Now, 2015 for Kari Lehtinen. I got a video coming out next week. We'll talk about that then. Not as good as 2014 and 2013, I'll say. Another honorable mention. Oh, it's Phil? Now, they didn't make the playoffs this year, so I'm not quite as mad about it. But still, he's putting up like 80 points a year. My final honorable mention is Taylor Hall, who put up 80 points on a horrible Edmonton Oilers team. Probably the most depressing or disappointing of the Decade of Darkness teams. It's the Dallas Eakins one. They weren't even trying to be bad at this point. They're really trying to win. Taylor Hall put up 80 points with them without a ton of help. Jordan Eberle was still there, but still. But our winner for 2013 is a sign of the awards voters really starting to overthink it. It's Erik Karlsson. He was first in points by defenseman by a mile and was not even a finalist for the Norris because he was -15. That's almost definitely why. People were really sick of Erik Karlsson at this point. This was post Erik Karlsson's first Norris, but pre-Erik Karlsson dragging the Senators to the conference final. This is when everyone was like, oh, he's bad defensively, so he's bad. It's like, no, he's okay defensively. He's not good defensively, but he's fine. Especially at this point in his career. Seeing Erik Karlsson score 20 goals and being like, this sucks, actually. Now, were the Senators any good that year? They were okay. They were mediocre. They didn't make the playoffs. But Karlsson was far, far and away their best player. Sorry to Jason Spezza, but Karlsson was far and away their best player. Now, our first honorable mention for 2015 is a favorite player of mine, Joe Pavelski. He was an elite two-way center that scored a ton of goals. But Sharks didn't make the playoffs. This was really where it started. If your team didn't make the playoffs, you're not getting any votes. For example, our other honorable mention, Jakub Voracek, who was a first-team All-Star. He put up a ton of points that season, but somehow the Flyers not making the playoffs made him not valuable to anyone. No beat writer from Philadelphia gave that guy a 5th place vote. But for our winner, we actually have another Flyer. Before I moved out to the shadow of Philadelphia, I really didn't think that Flyers fans gave a crap about Steve Mason. But there are still a lot of Flyers fans who have very fond memories of Steve Mason because he was very good for them. Now, the reason I don't remember that is because they weren't any good for him. Yes, I talked about Voracek scoring a lot of points, but those Flyers teams were not very good aside from their very top-heavy core. You still had Giroux, you had Voracek, and you, of course, had Mason in net. He had a .928 save that season, but didn't get any Hart votes because he went 18, 18, and 11. Goalies as a whole, I'm coming to realize, are really disrespected unless their team is great.
So baby, pull me closer in the backseat of your Rover.
2016 is one of the most in-the-weeds years we've ever gotten. This is the year where Drew Doughty won his Norris because he was due. It was like 25. Erik Karlsson has 82 points, and Drew Doughty's due. It's 50 points. And maybe you should be due for having a Norris caliber season. How about that? And it's kind of the same deal with Anze Kopitar, who is due for a Selke, and he gets a Selke. Both Norris and Selke being two of the most reputation-driven awards. These two players also then got Hart votes. But you know who didn't is Jonathan Quick. That Kings team was good. It was a 102-point team, and Jonathan Quick had a .918 save percentage and played 68 games for them. Was he the best goalie in the world? No, not necessarily at that point. But was Quick the Kings MVP? Yeah. I'm sorry, Anse. I'm sorry, Drew. Jonathan Quick was the Kings MVP. Another honorable mention we have is John Klingberg. Now, that'll sound crazy to a lot of people who have watched John Klingberg play in the past a little while here. But for a while, John Klingberg was an offensive juggernaut. He scored a ton and wasn't nearly as bad defensively as he would later become. He's like Erik Karlsson for dummies. Diet Erik Karlsson. In fact, that's kind of his whole career, is just being the great value Erik Karlsson. Members mark Erik Karlsson. But our winner in 2016 is Johnny Gaudreau, a guy who historically got a little bit disrespected for major awards like the Hart. Gaudreau was far and away the best player in the 2016 Flames who didn't make the playoffs. That's our reasoning. But he did it without Yuri Hoodlering beside him like he had before. Gaudreau only received Hart votes in 2 seasons in his far too short career. 2 4th-place finishes. In 2017, we have Mark Scheifele from the Jets. They almost made the playoffs. Scheifele can't play defense, but he scores a ton and was the best player on that Jets team. Leon wasn't quite Leon at this point yet, but he was still scoring, still being called a McDavid merchant at this point. We'll get more into that in 2 years. But our winner this season is Shea Weber, who scored 17 goals while being one of the NHL's best defensive defensemen.
God's plan. That's all I know. I don't really know that song very well.
2018 is another year where we have tiers of honorable mentions. Our least honorable mention is John Klingberg again. He's still John Klingberg. There was a perception problem with Klingberg, and now there's a reality problem with Klingberg. But back then there was a perception problem with Klingberg where the stars were Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin's team, and even before Klingberg, Alex Radulov's team. But in reality, around that 2018 season, Klingberg's probably the best player on that team, unless you maybe want to talk about Ben Bishop being up there too. And I'm not saying that Seguin and Ben are bad. They didn't get Hart votes either. Somebody, the honorable mention, really, I think Klingberg is the best player on that team. It could be anybody on that Stars team. Somebody should have gotten something. I know they didn't make the playoffs. They had 92 points, though. That's good enough some seasons. Somebody should have gotten something, right? Then our most honorable mention, Marc-Andre Fleury. He was most of the reason that Knights team was good. Now, I know the Misfits, William Karlsson, Jonathan Marchessault, they were great. And a lot of people really overachieved on that team. I'm looking at Cody Eakin, Eric Holla. Sorry, guys. But Marc-Andre Fleury was the icon of that Knights team. And I know he missed time for injury. He hadn't yet gotten the PNG of a sword into his back. In 2018, it was Mark and the Misfits. Like, I know it was the Misfits. It was all the Misfits, blah, blah, blah. That was Marc-Andre Fleury's team. The only player from that 109-point Knights team to get Hart votes was William Karlsson. He had 43 goals. He led the league in plus-minus. Voters love plus-minus. But come on. This is Marc-Andre Fleury. And that's not even the winner for 2018. The winner for 2018 is Phil Kessel. I know he was playing with Evgeny Malkin a lot of the season. I know he was on a power play with Sidney Crosby. But you can't just be, oh, he's the third best player on that team. Yeah, sure. He's not as good as Malkin or Crosby. But he was really good that year. I don't think there's a cap on the number of guys from one team who can get a vote, other than the number of beat writers they have in their city who are willing to give them votes, I guess. Phil only had one fewer point that season than the guy who won the Hart. It was Phil's career high. He had 92 points. And he went his entire career without receiving a Hart vote. Phil Kessel, a borderline Hall of Famer, was never good enough for a Hart vote.
I'm gonna take my horse to the old town road. I'm gonna ride till I can't no more.
Okay, 2019, let's blow through the honorable mentions because I really want to talk about our winner here. Morgan Rielly was a defenseman who put up a ton of points with a good team, but he was an offensive defenseman, and people don't like that. Being an offensive defenseman is bad. Jack Eichel was the best player on that Sabres team, but that Sabres team wasn't very good. We've heard that story before. Jack Eichel is the classic story of best player on a bad team by a long shot, but he's not going to get any love. Our winner is Leon Draisaitl. I think we're really too far into the weeds here. Leon was second in the league in goals and fourth in the league in points. The Edmonton Oilers did not make the playoffs. I don't care. I think it's stupid that making the playoffs or not making the playoffs determines whether you can get a Hart vote. The guy you're putting fifth on your ballot probably isn't going to win anyway. Leon had a legitimate argument to be an actual Hart finalist, especially if Edmonton would have made the playoffs. It's not his fault, man. At this point, even in 2019, there was a mentality surrounding McDavid and Draisaitl where they were kind of one entity. There was McDavid, the best player in the world. And there was Leon Draisaitl, the guy who played with Connor McDavid. It was not McDavid. It was McDavid and not McDavid. That's stupid. Leon shouldn't be punished for playing with someone else who is good. Nobody giving him a single vote that year is probably the most egregious of anything on this list. He's probably the truest snub of anyone here. I'm sorry, Leon. You get a fifth place Hart vote in my heart.
Ooh, I'm blinded by the light.
2020. There's Victor Hedman. It's the classic case of not the best player on his team and is a defenseman, so no one's interested in voting for him, even though he's a superstar. My other honorable mention is Mika Zibanejad before Mika went careening down to the earth in recent seasons. But those early, the Rangers only have Zibanejad and Panarin years, those two were so cool together. I remember a lot of people being like, oh, the Rangers who weren't good at all that year, are going to get into the playoffs, and they're going to take out the Carolina Hurricanes. They got the piss kicked out of them. It was like, oh yeah, it's the Rangers. They aren't very good. But my winner is a guy that I mentioned a little bit earlier. It's our friend Ben Bishop. The Stars were good enough to eventually make it to the Cup final even without Bishop. Kind of hurts his case here. But still, the guy was out of the league the next year, and he was awesome in 2020. I also just like Ben Bishop. My thoughts go out to you, Ben Bishop.
That last one probably could have been Anton Khudobin, like we always talked about, but he didn't start as many games. It's everything I'm insecure about.
By 2021, the voting is getting a little less bad, and you can tell because my honorable mentions are Artemi Panarin. Yeah, Artemi Panarin. He's really good. The Rangers weren't very good. Yada yada. But then I have Alex DeBrincat and Tyler Toffoli. Was Tyler Toffoli the best regular season player on a Cup Final Canadiens team? Probably. But my winner is Marc-Andre Fleury. It was the best season of his career. He won the Vezina. He was the best player on a Knights team that made the playoffs and finished first in goals against. And I like Mark Stone, who did get the Hart vote for the Knights, but it should have been Fleury. He won the Vezina. They didn't even give him a vote. They gave it to Mark Stone. Mark Stone didn't even win the Selke. That's the thing he's good at.
You know it's not the same as it was.
In 2022, and stop me if you've heard this one before, we have 2 honorable mentions of defensemen on good teams who weren't necessarily the very best player on their team, but were pretty close. It didn't get any respect. Hedman was second on the Lightning in points behind Steven Stamkos. It was Hedman's most productive season of his career. It wasn't his best as far as underlying numbers are concerned, but you can't deny 84 points from a big defenseman like him. Adam Fox, I do think, was the Rangers' best skater in 2022, but the problem was Igor Shesterkin, who was a Hart finalist. The most damaging thing to your Hart case is having another Hart candidate on your team. But our winner in 2022 is UC Saros, who really helped Nashville get into the playoffs that year, but all the credit went to Roman Josi instead.
Last night we let the liquor talk.
It's around this point that things have switched, where secondary players on very good teams are the people not getting votes, and the people who are getting votes are the great players on pretty bad teams. Except for you, Leon, because you're both. 2023, all 3 of the guys are kind of that case. We have Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who scored 100 points and didn't get a single Hart vote. He's joining Leon. Then we have Braden Point, who, if you're listing 2023 Lightning players, Braden Point's probably the 5th best player on that team, which is really damning for his Hart candidacy. The winner in 2023 is Adam Fox. Igor and Panarin steal basically all of the spotlight from Fox, even though I think that when the Rangers were at their best, Fox was the main reason they were more than just an Igor Shesterkin team. And finally, this past year, 2024, we have honorable mentions of Cale Makar, Mikko Rantanen, and Leon Draisaitl, all of whom fit the second best player on very good team. Well, I guess Mikko or Cale are third, but you get what I'm saying. Our number 1 non-vote getter for 2024 is a bit of a throwback. The Russian guy who was the best player on a team that didn't make the playoffs. Kaprizov had 27 more points than Matthew Boldy and 16 more goals than Joel Eriksson Ek, the 2 people in second place in both of those statistics on the Wild. It also just feels fitting to end with the high-flying Russian winger who gets no love because his team is mediocre, though it's a little different from Kovalchuk, who got no love because his team was bad. So that's it. Give your feedback here in the comments. Say who I snub from the list of snubs, all that. Say who you think is the most ridiculous person on this list. It's Leon Draisaitl. Leon Draisaitl is the answer. But that's all I have for you guys today. I'll be back next week with a more classic style video talking about the 2015 Dallas Stars. You aren't going to want to miss it, baby. But thank you guys, as always, for watching. I hope to see you again soon. See ya.